Need your daily fix on mixed martial arts?
We're going to kind of recap Bellator 155 from UFC 198.
Who's who?
Kind of a controversial decision.
And who's not.
I couldn't figure out why, and then it hit me.
Well, don't you fret, because Golden State Media Concepts got you covered. Get your daily dose of MMA podcast. Everything from the UFC, Bellator Fighting Championships, Extreme Cage Fighting, Invicta Fighting Championships, and so much more. Join us as we talk about some of the biggest names in mixed martial arts. We've got you covered here on Golden State Media Concepts MMA Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Golden State Media Concepts Mixed Martial Arts Podcast, the podcast that covers everything mixed martial arts. And today I got my main sidekick with me, William. How you doing there, William?
I'm real good.
William, we had a crazy weekend here on the MMA side. What was your take so far?
Oh, so fantastic. I loved every single fight on the cards.
You know, leading into UFC 200, there has just been like weekend after weekend, just so many amazing fights.
They're just hitting their stride, riding that momentum into 200.
Man, 200, if 200 goes anything the way this last group of cards went and then the cards before that, man, we are set for some serious fireworks.
On paper, if it's just half as good as it is, then I'll take that.
And I think it's going to be pretty special. Well, today we're going to cover quite a few things because it was a jam-packed weekend. We're going to talk about all the stuff that went down from UFC Fight Night with Rory MacDonald and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. And then we're also going to talk about some fights on the World Series of Fighting, which was on Friday. Bellator 156, which was on Friday. And then for an extra treat, we don't normally cover the Eurasian Fighting League, but we're actually going to talk about the Eurasian Fight Night Global 50, which is in St. Petersburg, Russia, which featured William's favorite guy, Fedor. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Okay, we're back. And we had one heck of a weekend this weekend. Capping off with, which is always the big crown jewel, which is the UFC Fight Night, which started out with which had, Rory MacDonald versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. And man, did that fight disappoint, or were you excited about it?
From a general fan perspective, a lot of fans were disappointed from it. Whereas if you're looking at a technical standpoint, and if you're really a fan of martial arts, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really technical chess match. Even Wonderboy Thompson alluded to that in his post-fight speech, where he thought that the fight was going to play differently, but it was more of a chess match than anything.
Yes, I agree. And just to start off, Stevie Wonderboy Thompson won unanimous decision over Rory MacDonald, but it was more, instead of an action-packed, just brawl where there was going to be everyone expecting bombs to be laid everywhere. It turned into this real like strategic type of fight in which I agree with William. If you like pure martial arts, this was a great fight for me because you could see how how the strategies were unfolding, and honestly, I thought when the final results came down, it came down to Wonder Boy's footwork really causing Rory MacDonald so much problems.
Yeah, Rory couldn't even answer that. He was trying to pressure him. He was trying to take him down, but Wonder Boy was just one step ahead. He was feinting a lot, and he was just so much quicker than MacDonald that he couldn't really catch him, and he paid for it all night long.
Speed kills in this particular case. How did you have it scored? I actually gave Wonder Boy all 5 rounds. Did you give Rory MacDonald any a round at all?
I said I was watching it, and I saw that the first few rounds were very close, but I still had Wonder Boy winning all 5 rounds.
Yeah, I thought as a whole, it was a really tactical fight, but Wonder Boy just proved to be way too much. And in the final round, the 5th round, that's when he started to bust MacDonald up a lot. Broke his nose again, which he's going to be out of the picture for a little while because he's going to have surgery on his nose because he took some serious punishment. But in the end, Wonder Boy just proved to be, just so, the footwork just was so far superior.
He is an absolute force. It's going to take a lot of pressure, and it's going to take a lot of angles to beat him. And he's a master of both of those in his own way. He's more of a counter striker, but he can definitely pressure, as we saw him lay it on MacDonald.
Now, with Wonder Boy now being, without question, the number one contender, go down the line, and when you start thinking about who are the top contenders right now in that division, do you see anybody beating Wonder Boy?
I don't, but I see some exciting fights. I'd love to see him against Robbie Lawler, and I think a very interesting fight that's out there for him is Carlos Condit. It's a real stand-up war.
That would be a fun fight. And it's kind of weird to even, because of how Robbie Lawler has just been such a stud in that division. It's crazy to look at somebody someone this new to come in and say, right now, I'll take whomever over Robbie Lawler, but I feel just that way, that if Wonder Boy fights Robbie Lawler right now, I'm leaning toward Wonder Boy being the next champ.
I definitely agree with you. I mean, I know that Wonder Boy is in his relative infancy in terms of MMA experience, but coming from his background of karate and kickboxing, he is, I believe he's 68-0 back in kickboxing, so he has a lot of fight experience on him. There's a lot of miles with him, but he's relatively fresh when you look at it from a perspective from MMA and damage taking over his career.
I would agree. About the mileage, there's not that much boy in the Wonder Boy. Wonder Boy's 30-something years old. Actually, he's 30, I think he is. But, he's not young. But he's very fresh. He has great legs. Powerful kicks, a lot of speed in the hands. He has a style that is going to cause everyone trouble. And that makes it, that's when I look at Robbie Lawler, I say Robbie Lawler's, he's a tough guy. He's heavy-handed. I just don't see, kind of like with Rory MacDonald, when is he going to be able to lay a hand on him?
Unless he goes full 5th round Robbie Lawler mode just from the get-go and really tries to pressure Thompson, he's not going to touch him. Thompson's just so masterful in his counter-strike, and we saw that with MacDonald. MacDonald tried to pressure him against the cage, and he just had no luck with it. Nothing was working for him. Steven is so big, and he's so fast, and he's so technical that it's really hard to lay anything on him.
Yes, I agree.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Now, we're going to go through and we're going to talk a little bit more about the card in general, because UFC Fight Night was a very interesting night. It started off, and we're just talking about the main card, and not necessarily the prelims. But when I look around and I look at Valerie Letourneau versus Joanne Calderwood, I thought this would be a very easy fight. For Valerie Letourneau, I thought this would be, just something that she could go through, get back on her winning track, and just go through. But that's not what happened. What was your take on this fight? Because I had some problems with this fight. So I'm gonna let you go first, and then I'll dive back in.
Yeah, well, we're gonna go into some of the controversial aspects of it first or after this, but I was really impressed with Calderwood's improvement. She looked a lot better. She's training with TriStar now, up with Faraz Zahabi and GSB's camp and Rory MacDonald and them. So she looked a lot better. Her Muay Thai was more crisp, but the very fascinating and very controversial side of the fight was that the referee really wasn't doing their job.
This was kind of the theme for a couple of fights this weekend, is that I felt like a lot of, not necessarily a lot of them, but a few of the referees I felt like really fell asleep this weekend. When I look at Joanne Caldwell, I look at her and I say, I wasn't really overly impressed with her results. I mean, I was impressed with how she ended up winning by a third-round TKO. But if you watch the fight, Valerie Letourneau, she takes a shot in the chest, and, she instantly grabs her chest. And it was one of those things where you can kind of tell she kind of injured herself. And then the fight kept going, and she ended up grabbing her chest again, and she ended up turning away. And everyone thought the fight was over for an injury purposes, but the referee just kind of looked at her and just said, "All right, get back in there and fight." And so she's injured, and Joanne's on her, and then they keep the fight going. They stop it again, up against the fence. She kind of turns away, and the referee at that point should have stopped it again, but he did not. He let the fight keep going. Valerie's walking away, and then Joanne has no choice. It's nothing that Joanne did wrong, but Joanne had to jump on her, and she ended up taking a number of really bad shots that should not have never happened whatsoever.
Yeah, it was really a lot of unnecessary damage, and I was really saddened by that. I mean, it is always protect yourself at all times, but it's the referee's job to understand when they're not protecting themselves intelligently, especially for mixed martial arts. When they're not doing that, the fight's over, and it's your job to stop it. And that was really frustrating to watch.
And I'm like looking at this referee, and I'm like, what else does a person have to do when she grabs her chest, shakes her head, and turns her back and starts walking away, and the referee's like, keep going, like. I mean, I thought that referee should have been either at least minimum reprimanded, because this was just such a poor job on his part.
It'd be a fantastic going back to how other sports are doing it. If the NBA does something where they review the last 2 minutes of the refereeing and they decide whether or not it was bad, they should do something similar with the athletic commissions, just to hold the referees accountable, because that's only going to grow the legitimacy and the safety of the sport.
I agree with you. But anyway, I mean, I don't want to take anything away from Joanne Calderwood. She really fought hard. I congratulate her on her win. And so, what does that do for her? Does that put her in the picture? She wasn't. I don't believe she was ranked before. So I think this fight beating a top 5 contender, is going to put her in the top 10. But do you see her really contending for the title?
I mean, it's a whole new division. I mean, it's the 125 division. So anybody, I mean, she's top 2 right now. She's top 1 if we're talking about that.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay, William's right. It's one of those things where they actually fought at the flyweight division, the flyweight weight, and that was the first fight in the history of the UFC at that weight. Now, I agree with you. If the UFC decides that they're going to start a flyweight division, this really puts her not necessarily in the top 10. This puts her right in the thick of things then, because that'd put her in one of the top 3 or 4 flyweights going right now, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, she looked really good in terms of how she performed, given that she didn't have to cut as much weight as she would in the strawweight division. So I was really happy to see that, and I hope that a lot of the other either the strawweights or the bantamweights, they really take notice to this division and really light it up like she was doing, where you're fighting at your natural weight class, because that's what I really want to see.
Now, as far as Valerie Letourneau goes, this situation was a disaster because, one of her big issues was the fact that, it's so hard for her to make weight. She had just lost a title shot against Joanne, and now she gets a fight at her natural weight, which would be featherweight, and because of an injury and I'm just going to say it, an incompetent referee, she gets knocked out on a very big stage. That's going to be a lasting memory for a lot of people. This is going to push her career back a little ways.
Yeah, she's definitely going to have to regroup, and I'm thinking that she should take a little bit of time off just to recover mentally, and then get back in the thick of things. I mean, the strawweight division is relatively new, so she has home there. It's just that she has to get her mind right and just get back in the thick of things.
Now, let's go on to Mercier versus Gouti. What did you think of that fight?
I thought it happened. I thought it went just as I predicted. I thought Olivier would dictate it on the ground, and he did for the most part, other than that first round where he lost a little bit of control of Gouti, and then Gouti reversed it. But other than that, I thought it was a good fight for him, and he showed me exactly what I was expecting.
When I watched that fight, I'm looking at Mercier, and I'm like, business as usual. I was not surprised by the outcome. Mercier, he won by in the third round with a rear naked choke. It was bound to happen. It went the way I expected things to go, but this really helped Mercier with this win. This really pushes him up a little bit further where he can get some much tougher, stiffer competition. I'm really looking forward to seeing him in his next few fights.
Yeah, he has a bright future. I'd like to see him get more experience in the stand-up. Right now, he's been out-grappling his opponents. I want to see what he can do to improve his stand-up game and see where his next level is.
Okay, now we're moving on to the negative version of Wonderboy Thompson versus MacDonald. This was polar opposite, and that's Stephen Boss versus O'Connell. There was no strategy in this fight at all. It was, let's go, let's just start throwing bombs, huge bombs at each other. They just pretty much battled and beat the crap out of each other for the entire fight. I mean, people were, at the end of this fight, people were standing and clapping and cheering like crazy because there wasn't a dull moment in this fight.
It was literally Rock'em Sock'em Robots, and
that's the perfect description of it.
Yeah, it was great. It got so rowdy there that Herbie actually stepped in and stopped it 5 seconds early because he couldn't hear the bell ring.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, and O'Connell, after the fight, he said that he took a page out of Max Holloway's book, and he was like, let's bang, let's go.
Man, they started from round one on. Some of the hardest shots landed, and I mean, I've never seen two guys get hit with more bombs in such a short period of time. It was nuts in there.
I loved it.
I'm more of the strategy. I like the strategy aspect of MMA. I knew that this is a lot of MMA fighters' dream or fans' dream, where it's just two guys, none of this, no playing around, just get in the middle of the ring, let's battle, bloodshed, eyes busted open. It was a war.
I mean, to each their own. I mean, everyone fights their own styles, and when you meet somebody else that you want to test yourself against, and they're willing to be tested against you, and you're just going to go at it, more power to you.
Now, let's move on. Where you're talking about being tested and showing your will. Let's talk about the cowboy. Donald Cerrone, he moved up in weight. Well, he bounces between weight classes anyway. But Donald Cerrone with a third-round KO of Patrick Cote. First off, he looked amazing. I think he should stay at this weight. He's been always naturally a taller fighter anyway. I think he finally found his weight class where he has the speed, he has the power. Cowboy looked impressive.
I've never seen him look as good. I mean, he was just fantastic out there. He looked really filled out in terms of his stature and his musculature. He seemed faster, and he seemed more responsive in his strikes. And he just chose everything right. I mean, all of his decisions in terms of whether to take it to the ground or to kick or to punch, everything seemed on point, and he was just nailing Cote all night long.
This was Cowboy's truly his best fight of his career, and I've seen pretty much mostly all of Cowboy's fights. I've never seen him look more impressive.
Yeah, I've been following Cowboy's career since he got picked up by Tap Out when they when they had their show. I've never seen him look that good. He was just so masterful, and he was just knocking Cote down over and over in the fight. And I'm happy it got stopped. It was just a masterpiece of performance from Cowboy.
Cowboy looked strong, dude. He really looked strong. I was impressed. And one of the things with Cowboy, one of the things that sometimes make you scratch your head is he's always a slow fighter. Sometimes he's almost like a turtle starting off. Not this fight. He started off fast. He started off perfect and kept on being perfect. That's just, it was an impressive showing by him.
Yeah, and if you look at it as a whole, he did start out slower because by the third round, he was just nailing everything.
You know what? He was so impressive in the first round that you didn't even realize that he could get better than that.
Yeah, he came out. He came out of the corner. He's like, "All right, last round, best round."
Yeah, he put it on him. So that concludes us talking about the UFC Fight Night. Like we talked about before, Wonder Boy really put his name on the marquee and really showed what he could do. Fantastic footwork. Donald Cerrone showed, he could be really impressive. And then you had some really great fights up under there. But it was a great night as a whole. Now, when we come back, we're going to talk about the fights that happened the day before.